Let me ask you a question. Do you remember the MP3 player wars between Microsoft and Apple? How Zune was competing against Apple's iPod? Only one product got adopted and the other one died. Why was that? Was it the engineering? Was it the product design? Or was it something else? iPod had the better intuitive design. It was sleeker. We all know the Apple winning formula. That was on full display for the masses for the very first time. That's exactly the ethos of this next founder that I'm talking to. His name is Shak, not the NBA superstar, but equally impressive CEO of Hello Robo. They're a design agency. They make intuitive interfaces for robotics companies, and they ensure that your robot is useful. It is safe. It is taking human behavior, psychology, preferences as requirements to allow your robot to perform the best job it was intended to do. We get into the details of what makes a great, safe design, what the future of robotics holds. It was an amazing conversation, and Shak is an amazing human being, and they make the best merchandise in the business, and we had a lot of fun. Come join me to learn about the human side of robotics on this episode of Robot Builders Club. I'm your host, Ali Afzal. Let's dive in. Okay, Shak, what a pleasure and honor to have you finally on Robot Builders Club. Before we jump in, I want to thank you and I want to acknowledge a few things on record while I have you in this recording. First, this was a dream of mine to launch a podcast. I'm in the industry myself within robotics, but it was something that I wanted to do for a long time and didn't, oftentimes starting something is the hardest piece just to get going, that initial inertia, overcoming that. I reached out one random weekend. I said, I'm going to do it. So I sent random cold messages to a whole bunch of people. You were one of the first ones that took the time to respond. So thank you for that. Secondly, you validated that there's a need for something like this. You encouraged me when I posted my first couple of episodes. Thank you for encouraging. Thank you for validating. And more than that, number three, you provided feedback. You shared what you thought was a good idea, and that got me going. And I got the tools for the recording studio.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I want to thank you for treating me like a real podcast. You're the first one who sent me merchandise. I'm wearing it proudly.
Looks good.
So with that, thank you for being here, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure mine. Honor is mine. Thank you for saying all these great things. Let's just start the podcast with this topic. It's so easy to ignore, neglect people who reach out to you as you getting busy. I'm pretty busy with our business stuff, but I feel like people don't do that enough. Like just respond and spend 5 minutes and, helping someone or talking about, different topics such as, this topic. And I always encourage even my team members, just like you respond to people. You never know what kind of connection it will bring to you.
Yeah. And that creates new ideas, new connections. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
With that aside, let's jump straight into Hello Robo. You're CEO of a human robot interface company. You started in the design world, and that yielded results when you moved over to the robotic space, creating interfaces for humans that are actually operating these robots. So maybe kick it off with sort of your origin story, how Hello Robo got started, and you've moved into a new office now. Congratulations, you're scaling. Let's start there a little bit.
Yeah. Let's kind of go back in time a little bit. I built my career in design. I started with advertising, marketing design, and then tried motion design. And as my career was growing, I was founding myself more in UX design, or sometimes people call it digital product design world, simply because that particular practice had more evident exercises of solving business problems, but also doing it aesthetically and beautifully too, right? So there is sort of business aspect. Sometimes we call it the science aspect of this craft, and then there's aesthetical aspect. A lot of times in marketing design or like brand design, there is more aesthetic kind of
Yeah.
side of it rather than business side. And I think it was year 2020, 1 month into COVID, people go crazy. My company at the time, it was called Fair. It was a car startup. I told them, hey guys, do you care if I work from home or from anywhere? At that time, I lived in LA. They said, yeah, we really don't care. Like, so long as you do your work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
cool, I'm moving to New York. And I moved to New York and I realized, okay, I can work remotely. And at that time, it was such a new thing. Like a lot of people just were switching to remote. And I realized if I can work remotely, I can just probably go full freelance. And I left the company and I started freelancing. And project after project, the scale of the projects were getting bigger and bigger. And I was realizing probably I need to make a decision if I start a team, start with freelancers first and then turn them into full-time designers, or I keep being IC. And I chose the path of being a manager and scaling the design services. And I think in year 2021, I started Hello Robo. And in the first year, we were doing different types of work, different types of clients. Fintech, crypto was bigger at that time,
Yeah.
consumer products. But I was not happy with that situation. I was like, guys, we're doing too many things. At that time, it was like 4 people in my company. I said, we should have our focus. We should pave our way towards robotics. And in the team, people were like, well, why robotics? And I said, just, I care about it. I love it since I was a child. I love Transformers and robot toys. I wish I was a mechanical engineer or engineer more close to the kind of robotics community. I'm not, but at least let's contribute to the community with UX and design services. And that's where the click started. We're like, cool, it makes a lot of sense. And at that time, sorry, I'm making this story long. My
No, that's
friend,
great. Yeah,
yep,
continue, please.
my friend Sandeep Yathi, he's the head of robotics at TerraDepth right now. I reached out to him and I said, Sandeep, what should I do? Kind of want to work with robotics. We know it's still a young market, to be honest. There is not much like VC spotlight, so to speak. Where should we start? He's like, Shak, you guys should start with Rust. It's just open source
The open source.
community. They will take any design help because, frankly speaking, things don't look well there because they're more like kind of engineer focused. And we just reached out to Kat. She works at Rust, and she's like, of course, yeah, help us. And we started helping them a lot, and that helped us understand the whole robotics development workflow, and which I think is the
Got
main
it.
thing. The main challenge was for us, let's understand first what's a simulation is, what's testing is, what's operating is, what does it involve, who are the users? And then from there, over the next sort of 4 years, we started developing our expertise and knowledge in robotics. Fast
Got
forward,
it.
we're not a remote company anymore. We're working the office now in New York.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. Your journey, you it's funny how Transformers are an impetus for a lot of us. I love Transformers too, and that was the first time I said, "Man, robots are
Yeah.
cool," you know?
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit of the value proposition that you're bringing. Let's make that real, right? Your most founders or most operators that are bringing a robot company or robot to the market think it's the operation side of things that would be hard. It is the autonomy piece or kinematics or developing motion control. That's the hard part. You have the visibility of the working at enabling the interface between the robot and the human. Talk to me about what is the challenge there? What are your clients finding? Whoa, this is harder than we anticipated.
On a high level, just let's say philosophically speaking, I always tell my team, I also tell clients, we're designing the human side of robotics. As soon as a human being interacts with a screen or not, doesn't matter, with a
Yeah.
robot, there are so many challenges that founders didn't realize they would face just because it's a human. Humans are unpredictable. Even up to date, there is no sort of personalization algorithm that can fully understand how human thinks. We're very unpredictable creatures.
And
So we're
there's
trying.
variation too. One person may view the same interface differently from another one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a super good point. We, with our knowledge from previous industries, we understood that, oh, that's such an important thing. for robotics products teams or founders to pay attention to. And the exact moment they start paying attention to it, when their product becomes, when they sell their product, when they're actually users, when they kind of leave the R&D phase, where everybody, engineers, they were so focused to making sure that thing works and doesn't fall or
Yeah.
collapse. That's where they're like, oh, we need an interface. Hello Robo, can you help us? Up until before that, a lot of engineers, a lot of founders, most of them have engineering background. They don't understand the importance of that thing. So that's my
Yeah,
long-winded
that
answer
makes
to that.
sense.
Yeah.
The robot is in the hand of the experts in the beginning. They know how to work the back end, make it do certain things. But when you give it to customers, they're not engineers necessarily. That's
Yeah.
where the challenges
Yeah,
come up.
they're far from it. And I feel like even before robotics, when I was working in different tech companies, one thing I remember I learned, even us designers, we were in that trap. We were in that tech bubble, and we were
Mhm.
designing with by default, thinking that, oh, user of course will do that. Or sometimes even when the engineers build the interfaces, they put very engineering
Mhm.
labels on simple things like buttons, like enter value. People don't know what enter value is. Like
Yeah.
it should sound more human, saying like, give us your first name or something like that.
Would you say that Apple was an inspiration for you in that way that they changed the
Yeah,
paradigm in
I
terms of
think so.
interfaces?
Yeah, I think there are a few companies who prioritize, because sometimes people call it user needs, some companies call it customer needs. It's all the same thing. They have enough of empathy to prioritize what a human needs, and they really democratized it, like, I don't know, 20 years ago, and a lot of people and companies started paying attention to that part.
So
Yeah.
let's that's an interesting point for a robot manufacturer. At what point should they make that decision between building it themselves, meaning building the interface, versus working with you guys? When do you think a robot startup, let's say, should build its own interface, and when do you think that is a mistake?
There are so many different answers to this question. I don't know. There is no perfect answer. Maybe I'll give you a few versions of that
Sure.
answer from my perspective. The quickest and easiest answer would be, as soon as you sell your interface, your software, it's part of your
Mhm.
robot
Offering.
experience, you should
Mhm.
pay attention to that because it is your product. Making operators, let's say, I don't know, in construction, for example, frustrated and they not getting their job done, or day to day they not improving their job while using a robot autonomy, maybe it's a terrible product you're selling them. So that's why when a lot of founders come to us and say, hey, we're not sure if we need it or not, one of the questions we say, hey, are actual people using it, and are you charging them money for it? If yes, then I prescribe them and say, you guys need to pay attention to that. It's your product. A more philosophical answer to this question, it really depends of what kind of organization you run, what kind of founder you are. There are organizations who are engineering driven. They
Mhm.
prioritize that more over user experience. And I think it's fine. I feel like our team, when we jump into a new call with a robotics company, we can't convince them of the importance of design because they run the entire organization with a focus on engineering. And I think it's totally fine. There are other companies who run their focus on sales. They're like, just
Right.
let's do go to market, and good for them. And it's all subjective.
Yeah.
Historically, what we see where a click is with Bedrock Robotics, Cosmic Robotics, one of our clients, both of the founders and leadership, they really emphasize, sorry, the meaning of interface and user experience, and that's why we didn't even need to convince them. They're like, cool, we know what we want, let's work.
That makes a lot of sense. Even while you're where you laid that out beautifully, I was thinking about my past experiences with the companies that I've worked with. It oftentimes there's this concept of sun domain, meaning
Mhm.
which domain is the has the most power, or where how
Right.
is the company led. That is the main domain. So a lot of tech companies would be engineering driven, and I've seen
Yeah.
companies operating in regulated environment, maybe quality driven,
Mhm.
and others design driven. So that does make a sense, regardless of what is driving,
Mhm.
who's in the driver's seat of the company, what domain.
Mhm.
It matters that you're prioritizing what the customer, how the customer interacts with the product. So that
100%.
makes a lot of sense. What do you
Yeah.
think the first time founders, talking about them, what do they get wrong oftentimes when it comes to interfaces?
So a lot of times when we talk with the folks in the community, we talk about interface as almost like a result. It's a tangible thing that it has buttons and transitions and like maybe there's digital twin, but that's sort of the tip of the iceberg. The real work and the real complexity for our company is all the work that goes before that. And a lot of time need to pass before AI will replace that work, which is, can I talk with your user? Can I identify, is this the right user we're building this thing for? A lot of times we notice that, hey, guys, seems like you built this thing for engineers, but that's the wrong type of user. What is the workflow? In our craft, we call it user flow. Like step one, I open my laptop. One, I unbox whatever thing I bought. It's a robot.
Yeah.
Step two, what do I do? Step three, and all these steps are the most important thing. And if they're figuring out the user, his or her needs and the user flow, if that's done wrongly, then I think it's hard to backtrack and say, oh, guys, I feel like we're building for the wrong type of user. It's actually a 55-year-old construction operator who
Yeah.
has bad vision and cusses a lot and drinks beer at 6 p.m. We should be building for that person rather than software or hardware engineer. And the interface itself is just it's the result of these steps.
No, that makes total sense. You're starting a hardware driven, oftentimes, product. You you're not going to necessarily see the needs of the end customer as it interfaces. So the engineers oftentimes will have those blinders on. And
Hmm.
that's where the offering that you're providing becomes
Hmm.
that much more important because you have the benefit of seeing
Hmm.
multiple companies struggle with the same problem of
Hmm.
and then the background coming from a UX perspective, it's
Hmm.
a powerful background to have to enable that interface
Yeah.
for the human at the end. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. But when let's talk
I was
about
gonna
yeah,
I was
please,
gonna
yeah.
add one important thing. We think it is related to product design, but even if teams don't invest in design, they should be doing that. Just iterate every day with customers, with operators. And I feel like this is such an old rule for all tech companies, but I still feel like they're not doing that enough. In robotics, also don't do it enough. Just like test whatever you have, the ugly MVP version with real operator,
Mm.
get feedback, iterate, and just do it like 2, 3 times a week. And I think it's super important to do that with design too, obviously.
Yeah, that whole lean startup methodology that just get in front of the customer early because the more
Hmm.
assumptions you make, the further into the product development lifecycle you're going to go without taking into account what the actual
Hmm.
customer needs. You have to put
Yeah,
yourself in their shoes. So,
yeah, and
what is
develop
the
more
right
empathy.
time for you to come in? I know you touched upon it when they're selling to the customer, but is there an ideal time you think?
It is again subjective to different processes of different design teams or agencies. In our agency is literally week one. As soon as we start working with someone, we're like, guys, put us in touch with at least 3 users of your product. And as soon as we do that, on the week like 3 or 4, we put a sort of rough version of an interface. We're like, guys, this is enough for us to go on field and test. One of the things during the kind of earlier projects we learned, obviously we design things very beautifully, make sure there is aesthetical aspect, subtlety in colors. And one of our design decisions for one of the products was just the disengage button that's everybody needs in their interface. And it was pretty subtle. Like it easy to see it during the sunny days, especially because there are a lot of operators out there who work not in the office like us, but like in the field. And they will just, as we're listening and watching them test the product, they're like, how the hell do I stop it? And we're like, well, there is a button. You should press it there. He's like, I can't see it. And he's yelling, and the button was big. And we're like, quickly realized we can't design in isolation. We should just put it out
Yeah.
there, learn, and make changes based on.
Got it. It's you have to account for all of these different non-tangible things, whether the operator is going to be confused, whether the operator
Mhm,
is going to mistrust the new robot that's being deployed,
mhm,
and whether they're going to understand
mhm,
the interface. It's all, or whether they're going to able to see what kind of environment plays
Hmm.
a role in it. So it's all
Yeah,
of
very
these
much.
non-tangible things. Um, I'm 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 assuming that you're getting requirements for when you're building.
Yeah, yeah. Great product teams provide a lot of requirements for the product. Sometimes they don't provide, but we already have enough of expertise to understand what are those requirements and limitations.
Got it.
Yeah,
Well,
but
thank
yeah,
you
that
for
makes sense.
setting the stage for what services you provide, what your process is. Let's move into maybe a little bit about some of these real lessons that you guys have learned working with real customers at the different
Mhm.
deployments. What's the biggest mismatch of how companies think they will use the robot and how they actually use it?
I want to maybe open up this question a bit more and maybe talk around the autonomy first. So many companies are trying
Yeah.
to solve the autonomy thing out there. I, it's a subjective opinion. I think that term autonomy is kind of over romanticized. There are a lot of steps before autonomy where maybe I let the machine work in autonomy, sorry, but I can keep my hand on pause or disengage
Mm.
button while I can also watch what's happening or what's about to happen in the current task flow. And I feel like, in my opinion, based on the founders who we talk with, they kind of underestimate these phases, like sort of manual autonomy or like pre-autonomy. I think maybe from real life example, a Tesla autopilot is a good example where you kind of let the car drive, but you still keep your hands on the steering wheel just in case
Right.
if something happens. And I think our team always pays attention a lot to this part of the flow where you give a machine a task, see how it performs. Maybe you observe metrics. Maybe there is a sort of timeline where you can put comments if you kind of notice, oh, the machine kind of jerked a little bit a couple of times. That's weird. Let me put a comment and save it so that my other team watches it. So these are the real things we think are important during the task completion, so to speak. So yeah, that's my long answer again. Autonomy is important, but there are so many steps before that, and we think even more important.
Got
Being
it.
able, yeah. So we designed a lot of features. We call them like sort of task timeline, where you can put some comments during the task timeline, sorry, and let other team members see operators. Digital twin is another big feature that we design a lot, but we also make sure it's functioning. One of the requests from users for one product was, I don't fully understand whether the machine is in autonomy or it's in manual mode or it's in faulted mode. Obviously, my eyes see that it moves in a certain way, but I'm not fully sure. And a lot of our decisions go towards building that confidence. Things are under control, operator.
Got it. Especially early on in a deployment where you're unsure what you can trust, what you can't. Giving that trust to the end customer makes the deployment successful, right? Which is half the
Yeah,
battle there.
yeah. I think maybe during this call we'll be mentioning a lot the two terms, trust and safety. Trust and safety. Like a lot of our decisions, sorry, are oriented towards these two topics. Indeed.
Got it. So would it be fair to say you're selling trust? You're building trust and building a sense of safety for the end customer. That is your main value
Yeah, if
proposition.
you drill down all the way to the emotions of the user, is how can I make you feel like you're trusting the system, the interface, and the machine? How can I make you feel safe in your actions? And again, before designing an interface, one of a $1 million questions we ask operators is, when you start a task, when you start your even working day, what are you scared of most of all? And a
Mm,
lot of engineers don't even think in emotions like that, but we think that the real value is in the answer to this
yeah,
question. Well, I'm scared if something bad will happen and I'll be in charge of it because this is a new thing for me to use. I'm scared if someone will be injured if the arm will move in the wrong way. And I'm scared if the arm won't, I don't know, generate alert sound if someone is in the proximity while it's in autonomy. So yeah.
got it. And expanding on that enabling human side of robotics, what would you say from your experience of working with robotics companies? What is something that founders and creator of robots obsessing over that the end customer doesn't really care about?
Autonomy. It's
Okay.
100% autonomy.
Uh,
Customer, believe it or not, doesn't care about autonomy. Autonomy is a means of making operators' job better,
yeah.
faster, efficient, successful. All they care about is, I mean, one thing I need to mention also, a lot of people we talked with on the user side, they're fascinated about this new technology. They're like, cool, I'm happy to use it. But
Yeah.
then they don't overemphasize the autonomy thing. That's more on the founder side. That's more on the builder side, which I think we're builders too. We think, yes,
Yeah.
it's cool, but at the end of the day, it's not. It's not
Got it.
important for users. So
And now let's flip the question. What is something that the operators and the end customers desperately want from the system, but it is typically not being given to them, whether that's information or a capability that founders
uh,
overthink.
this I'm gonna answer in kind of in a high level mode to this question,
Mhm.
and I think that answer also relates to a lot of AI tools out there, which is the reasoning, the why is this happening? For
Mm,
example, if my machine faulted 50 more times today, I mean, a lot of them, obviously there are a lot of cool presentations and videos, but machines, they do fault a lot in any
yeah,
robotics company, right?
of course.
But
Yeah.
but today it faulted 50 more times than yesterday. Any operator will say, why is it like that? Can you in the system give me a reasoning information to, well, because I don't know, you work today was way more sunnier. I'm making things up, but like maybe
Mhm.
there is enough input values that system can understand, analyze, and spit out some sort of analytical information saying, well, here are the reasons why. Or why I ran 20% more successful autonomous today more than last week. If operators are equipped with this reasoning information to answers to why, they will know their job better and they will be more efficient day by day. A lot of observability analytics tools, they give you a lot of what? Here's a
Mhm.
number, is,
All these metrics.
how things are going. And they're all amazing, but I would say they don't really, still up until today, they don't give you the why answer
Mhm.
to these metrics. I think it's a still very hard problem to solve once we're moving into artificial intelligence and reasoning and analyzing these inputs. But I think that's a great problem to solve for any robotics or hard tech company.
Yeah, recovering from failure, giving the reason for what's happening with the robot, the status of it, or problem solving issues. That is another big value a good interface would provide. So if let's say you have a robot that's failing in the field, what is a good interface providing in the first 10 seconds, let's say?
Just giant disengage button. Seriously. And I know we talk a lot about interfaces as screens, and that's maybe kind of our habit in which we can find in, but the
Yeah.
interface doesn't need to be on the screen,
Yeah.
which if it's a physical button, I mean, obviously a lot of companies have that,
Mhm.
but if it's some sort of ability, let's call the interface ability for to do something successfully, that's more important. And I think if something goes wrong, hey, stop, and maybe even record with voice saying, hey, well, I stopped because I was unsure if this is working properly or not. I was unsure if there is I don't know, cat running by the machine. Here are my reasons. So my supervisor can understand why I pressed that button.
Got it. What kind of, I guess all of my questions are coming from a standpoint of I'm also boxed into in a conceptual sort of view that most interfaces somebody's looking at an iPad or a screen like that
Mhm.
or a joystick. What are these different types of interfaces that you're working with? Could you categorize to make it real?
All of our clients and what we're building for them, most of it is tablet app or mobile app. It's a mobile device. They need to
Okay.
carry this thing around. Couple of them are on machine interface, but all of them are touch interfaces, so to speak. I train my team, but also philosophically, we talk about this every day. We push ourselves towards maybe there's alternative ways of interacting with a machine. I mean, with your company, obviously, there are a lot of teams who are exploring haptic intelligence
Yeah.
or if there is augmented reality interface that can help surgeons or dentists or people, I don't know, maybe diffusing a bomb, that that is, let's say, the interface helps you with teleoperation, that could be amazing and very fascinating thing for us to design too. But we haven't done it yet. And obviously, there is also voice interaction, which is a strong interface, but we
Yeah.
personally believe it should be a combination of voice with some visual cues. Even if it's a humanoid in front of you and it has a visor,
Yeah.
maybe there is some visual output in the visor that helps me think it's safe. This robot is thinking right now. So I'm not like staring at this dark visor and I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
the interesting you mentioning the conversational interface. I spoke to Lone. She's a founder who's trying to bring for commercial robotics just natural language, being able to democratize that interface where you don't need special programmers or special a specialist in a particular language
Mhm.
to be able
Mhm.
to operate a robot, but just use natural language, process it, and give that as an
Yeah.
interface. And increasingly, do you see if we're going to be potentially talking? I think that makes more sense for in a consumer setting, but in conversation, would that become commonplace for more
Yeah.
commercial and retail and industrial applications?
I don't want to sound like I'm an expert in this thing because we're still figuring things out, right? We're changing even the way we want to work in
Yeah,
design or in coding.
and industry is shifting. Yeah, of
You know,
course,
where
it's a
it's
moving target.
shifting. Yeah. My personal opinion, it must be a combination of both. You can't solely
Mm,
rely on voice. We
yeah,
are visual human beings. As an example, if I say a joke, you will smile.
yeah,
That's a visual cue for me that you're sort of validate what I
yeah.
did, right? Even though you didn't produce any sound. I mean, you can
Mm,
laugh how this. So I still think that we can't solely rely on sounds. Another example, if you work in a warehouse, a factory, that's a really loud environment, and it will be loud for the next 50 years. I assure you.
right. Yeah.
And if I rely on just voice interaction, there are a lot of opportunities to mishear my machine or make mistakes based on.
Yeah, and the other question I had, you were talking about haptic and giving a nod to sort of virtual reality teleoperation. Is from where you stand, the VR side of things, it hasn't really taken off. We were promised a future by Meta and Apple with Vision Pro and all of that because it perhaps it's too heavy. I tried to use it personally and maybe I'm getting old. It made me
Mhm.
a little dizzy,
Yeah.
like for long-term use. There's so much promise because you have so much real estate, you can be teleported into a different environment
Mhm.
and you can do all of these things. What is your perspective on that technology?
It will come back for sure. I think there is A, it's expensive. B, it's clunky. C, it makes you feel weird, look weird.
Yeah,
If you have a really beautiful haircut, it's gonna mess up your haircut, and we don't want that.
yeah,
And culturally, still at that time, when was like 5, 6 years ago, with that wave, we weren't ready, but I feel like it will come back as soon as maybe a good comparison would be with ChatGPT. ChatGPT 1, 2, 3, it was there, but
mm,
we weren't using it. We're like, that thing is stupid and not really working. But as soon as it kind of tuned up and started giving us sort of believable answers, we're like,
yeah,
okay, that's a real thing. And I feel like with VR and AR, it will be same destiny, so to speak. I'm a
yeah,
huge proponent of VR worlds interfaces. I remember I lived in LA for 12 years, moved
yeah,
to New York during COVID times, right? I was pretty lonely. I didn't have any friends.
yeah,
All my friends were in LA. And one of my friends was like, Shaq, let's all of us buy the Meta Quest. I
yeah.
found this game. It's like a multiplayer poker
Okay,
and it was so cool, Ali. We like every day I would put that device on and meet my friends at the table, and the game was so interactive. Like I could buy a gift and with my controllers, hand it to my friend over the table. It
yeah.
really helped me. So yeah, I love that technology. I think it will come back for sure.
Yeah, no wonder Zuckerberg basically betted his whole company on the tech and the metaverse because there's definitely value there. It's just
Yeah.
about removing the barriers for adoption. It's will get there potentially in a different capacity. Maybe it's a a little display that you put in as a lens into your eye where it's not heavy and it's not intrusive. Yeah.
Yeah. Once we also develop haptic intelligence, I think that's going to help us a lot because all the devices we kind of tested or saw, they don't sort of fully replicate the dexterity of my fingers and how I move my hands. Whether for consumer purposes, entertainment, or like specific technical purposes, it really will help me a lot as a user.
Got
But
it.
we're not there. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
good conversation. Nice to hear your sort of perspective on it. If we go back to interfaces and the information that is available, what information would you say robots have internally, information that's available that operators don't end up seeing and probably they should to make their life, their job easier?
I'm not sure, to be honest. That's a hard question. What information does
We
the
don't
system
that we don't
capture?
show go to the operators that in a deployment you go, we missed this, we should have shown this to the end customer, this information. This is an oversight. This would have actually helped the operator, right? The digger at
Okay.
the construction site or a
Mhm,
robot
mhm.
in the industrial environment.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's a tough
Yeah,
question. I love
yeah,
that. I'm glad
yeah,
you asked it.
yeah.
Let me
Which
think
is
about it, come back to it. But this
yeah,
is we
which is
should think
fair.
about it. Yeah, yeah.
Just a random thought. And if I flip it, what information do you think we end up giving to the operators that they don't really care about it? That the information that we're giving them unnecessarily.
I don't know. Maybe that would be depending on specific user. Sometimes
Mhm,
telemetry is over indexed, like these changing numbers, they distract. It's
mhm.
hard to answer that question. Also, it really depends on the exact user scenario.
Right.
Maybe at some point of my workflow, I do want to see these numbers, but
Mhm,
maybe before then, I'm not interested. What a lot of engineering teams tend to do, they tend to uh, surface all the numbers, all the information right away at any given time. But what we're trying to teach them and say, well, depending on the step of the user, certain things can be hidden just to sort of reduce the cognitive
mm,
load on their end. But again, this is sort of abstract answer. I feel like I'm
right.
giving
Depends
you.
on the deployment, and it's very dependent
Yeah,
on the type of robot customer use
yeah,
case.
yeah.
Then let's make it more about how do you decide in when you're interacting with a customer? What's your process for figuring out what to hide and what to reveal in the interface?
So, as I mentioned at the beginning of engagement, we have more psychological interviews with users where we ask things about their emotions, what they're scared of, if they had a magic wand, what would make their day super
Uh,
successful, right? So we learn from that. But then as soon as we have any first versions of the interface, we put it out there, test with users, and we ask, because we by that time we already know their workflow. And then we say, at this time, now that you're using the interface, you're in this screen, what do you think you're missing? And then
mm,
the operator will say, well, I think it would be cool to have more space for my notes. I think that's really important in this step. And then we ask opposite question, what do you think you absolutely don't need here? And we get certain answers, and then we kind of reach the statistical significance where, let's say, four or more operators gave us similar types of answers. We're like, okay, that's a validation for us to remove certain UI elements or data pieces from this given step, so on and so forth.
got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when you're deploying for the actual customers from the experiences that your company has had, what ends up being the bottleneck? Is it the training of bottleneck to adoption? Is it the training of the operator that's looking at the interface, the device? Is it the deployment speed? Is it the trust? What is the first thing that becomes a bottleneck?
Ali, I feel like I'm deflecting your questions. I'm like, you're asking a question that maybe begs a specific answer, and I'm gonna say it's a difficult answer because it has many sides. One of them is habits, especially if you're 40 plus, 50 plus year old operator user. You have a lot of habits. And let's say an example is you tell them, well, if something happens, can you comment on this thing in the interface and send it to the team so we document it, and later on in the analytics we understand why. and then the guy will say, "This is too difficult. I'm going to use my walkie-talkie and just talk with my supervisor."
Operator. Oh, okay.
Right? So you would say it's not really an interface problem, it's a maybe cultural problem, a habit problem.
Mm,
Another reason to this answer would be, yeah, maybe the interface is too complex and it's trying to do too many things and they feel frustrated. Sorry. And
mhm.
because of that, and that becomes a bottleneck in its own. So there are kind of multiple ingredients to this answer.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
guess it all boils down to, as you had mentioned earlier, safety.
Uh,
You're enabling at the end of the day trust and safety
yeah.
without using the word safety and without using the word
Yeah.
trust. Tell me what scares you most about a poorly designed robot interface.
Knock on wood, didn't happen with us, but
Mhm,
if there is any injury or something that could have been prevented with an
mhm.
interface, I think my team and I personally will take the guilt and say we fucked up.
Yeah.
And I think using the word safety, it still goes back to safety. Something
Yeah.
bad happened. One thing we even designers don't realize, you work with machines, even consumer machines.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm going to sound very pessimistic. Bad things will happen. Our team just bought Ricci Mini from Pollen Robotics. We assembled it and we started kind of tinkering with it, trying to, upload different apps into it. I think we did, I don't remember, we did some mistakes with it and it does a lot of jerk moves. And sometimes it just moves in a very, very scary way. I
Mhm.
mean, if it's a bigger robot and it's a humanoid robot at home will do something like that, which unfortunately I assure you will do it. I think injuries or some bad things will happen. As a society, I feel like not as a sorry tech bubble, we need to account for
Mhm.
that and be prepared for that. Yeah, it's a serious topic.
Yeah, absolutely. If a robotics founder could invest in one interface capability early, what would it be and why? Earlier in their product development.
I think I'm gonna repeat myself. Disengage
Yeah.
button, or yeah, the
Yeah.
hard stop. Like really, it's super important. It goes back
Uh,
to the days when we were younger, and my parents bought me a PC, and I think I don't remember the details, but somehow I went to the path of formatting the hard drive. Right, I don't
I
remember. I was a really young a kid, and I'm
yeah,
like, as soon as the formatting started, I'm like, okay, something is happening.
when it
And
goes
I
like
was in a panic. Yeah. And of course, what I did, I just unplugged it. And I feel like this is such an important thing for
yeah.
me to be able to do as a user. I think it's important. But maybe if we forget about interfaces, again, think about solving user problems.
Mhm.
I think my general advice to all the founders, especially engineering teams, they love trying to solve five problems, but they all half-ass solutions. And instead,
Mm,
why don't your machine solve one problem and do it really well?
uh,
And so maybe because of that, as a kind of chain reaction of solutions, the interface will be much simpler and lighter because it only needs to solve one problem. So that's a
I'm feeling
yeah,
there's a parallel in your answer to what's happening with the humanoid trend, right?
it
Trying to
does,
make a
yeah.
general purpose machine that will do everything, but maybe it makes more sense for you to figure out the exact problem, exact use case in the industry and create a machine that solves for exactly that problem.
I agree.
Mhm,
Yeah, our
mhm.
team did a research on how not just humanoids, but like how robots fit our homes. And we're going to release an article next week. And we, as part of that research, we interviewed a few founders, kind of gathered their opinions.
Yeah.
Like the idea of humanoid robot is also a little bit of over romanticized. It doesn't need to be human shaped with like limbs
Yeah.
thing. And if it's a automated washing machine, it is a robot and it actually does its work very well. And it's only one function. So I personally believe that the success are behind like single or two task robots at home or not at home that do their
Mhm.
work well. I think we should pay attention to companies like that.
Yeah. Makes sense. No, thank you so much for going into the value proposition, talking about
Mhm.
real deployment, interfaces, lessons you've learned, what makes a
Mhm.
good interface, what makes a safe deployment, all of
Mhm.
those details, I think everybody would find valuable. Approaching time, I want to switch a
Mhm.
little bit into the human side of Hello Robo. So, um, talk to me. You're very high EQ, not only IQ, EQ guy. I can
Thank you.
tell
Thank you.
you've been very good with building a team. Talk to me a little bit about how were you successful in scaling this in a very short period of time? What is your leadership philosophy? What made you successful and be where you are right now?
Internally, I measure my success by the amount of people that are not running away from my company. It's so important for me. And let's call the tools that I use for that is just try to be human, try to be empathetic, try to support your team. They are not robots. They can't perform 100% of the time all the time. Sometimes our designers like, hey, I don't feel it. And I'm like, if you don't feel it, take a day off. Don't kill yourself. And
Mhm.
I also try to do a lot of rituals where we have summer break. We close our doors. We don't work. It's not like a vacation time. It's like, guys, let's take a break and come back to work a week later. We do team offsites. Sometimes designers get bored working on very technical things like
Yeah,
robotics. And I try to bring them more inspiration from outside of the world. Maybe it's like a founder or design director from other type of company. He or she comes and shares their path with our design team and they stay inspired. I believe blindly that this will help me get to the next level of Hello Robo, next
right.
2 levels or 3 levels. Just like stay human.
Love
Yeah.
it. Love that answer. Love your approach on that. Wonderful. That's very inspiring. One question that then I have is, if somebody is starting a human robotic interface company today, like Hello Robo, let's say, having the perspective that you do now, what would you say to them from your lessons learned, do differently? What should they do to be successful?
You should have done it earlier. Yeah, absolutely. I still believe that robotics community is still young-ish. Things are changing. If we started organization like that, maybe even 10 years ago, I feel like we could have influenced the market more. I don't want to say the market is to use the word community. We would meet
Yeah.
more people, would exchange a lot of knowledge, maybe would hold up some meetups or hackathons where we build together. That maybe that's another part of my answer is my team is very hungry to build things on the physical aspect. They're like, okay, we feel like we figured the interface thing. Why don't we try, build our own thing now? Just like for R&D purposes.
Yeah.
And I wish maybe 2 years ago I would have started with that, just like team hackathons every Friday, guys. We have the components and everything we need, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper to build something, even
Yeah.
scrappy. Why
But
not?
maybe it's actually the right time, because you would have to figure out all of these different problems that are now solved that are open source, right? If you're
Yeah,
building your own
absolutely.
robot.
You're right. You're right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
100%. That's why it feels easier now. I wish I could
Mhm.
have done it, but earlier things were very unavailable and knowledge base was still very unavailable.
So are you actively pursuing a robot product of your own?
Yeah, that's the path of our company. This year, we're trying to get, as we call it, stable agency, whereas everybody knows the process of designing a product interface for robotics company, and we fully kind of own that process.
Mm.
And next year, we want to start building our own things.
Oh, wow. That's very
Yeah,
exciting. That's very interesting. I would love to circle back and figure out what lessons you have learned from that journey.
absolutely.
Could you share a little bit about which industry, what use case you're going after? Or, I don't know if you had liberty to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Don't have specific answer. What we know for sure, I'm going to speak on behalf of my team, that it will be doing one or two things. It will be very human, so to speak, in terms of its behavior. It really could be a sphere, to be honest.
Yeah.
But if it shakes in certain way or moves in a certain way that makes you feel like, oh, that's so human, that's what we're after. And I feel like I want to bring back a small example from Bedrock Robotics. It was one of our earlier trips to the work site. And in the early versions of the model, it was, let's say, digging, scooping, dumping dirt in the dump truck. And then
Yeah.
when it was dumping dirt in the dump truck, it did this kind of very subtle micro moves like that, like shaking. And
Uh,
such a human small thing. Maybe they updated the model. It's not doing it anymore.
right.
And we noticed and we're like, guys, this is it makes you feel warm in a way, warm and human. And we are very after these low things. If a machine does that, maybe it will help you as a user trust it more and feel safe being around it.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I don't know if you've been to SFO Airport where they have the robot barista, these little kiosks where you can buy
Mm,
coffee and
mm,
all of these. There's a robot
mm,
arm in the middle of this regular kiosk.
mhm,
You pay and you order from an interface right in front of you. The robot arm moves really quickly, pours
mm,
an espresso, and
mm,
puts milk.
mm,
But it's towards the end, or also when you're approaching, it does little waves with its
mm,
hands. It does like gentle sort of and makes that hard industrial looking arm feel a little
mhm.
warm and fuzzy. So to your point, there must have been
Yeah.
some interface designer that said, "Hey guys, this movement makes sense at the end." So that's a conscious
Right.
decision that.
Absolutely. I think the world needs more of these things. That's what
Mhm.
makes us feel like, okay, things are nice. And then I have these emotions and I feel safe.
Mm.
And sometimes an idea like that can come from a founder who's not a designer, but really cares about adding, we can also call them imperfections, adding these imperfections to the
Yeah,
behavior of the machine just so it feels like,
more
oh, okay,
human.
more human, 100%.
Are
Yeah.
you hopeful for the future? What's your I know the answer. Of course, you're a positive guy, optimistic. I want to gauge where on the spectrum are you in terms of where we're headed with physical AI, not
I,
taking into account what's happening in the world with wars and all of the other
yeah.
stuff. Just focusing on the robotics and physical AI and around fears of they taking jobs away. What is your vision of the future?
I think it's definitely brighter. Politics aside,
Yeah.
that's definitely an not funny topic. I personally believe before physical AI, with artificial intelligence, with automation, also we will need as a society to go through sort of a pain point. People, unfortunately, are losing their jobs. That's a real thing. And then there should happen some society shift or shift in economics. And I see a brighter day after that. But we need to go through that pain point, unfortunately.
That's
And
a very
it's,
pragmatic answer, but I think that
yeah.
that is true. Seismic shifts will require change, and with change, we would have to change the
Mhm.
type of work is being deployed. Yeah, we'll become enablers of AI, enablers of robotics, such as your company is in the same space.
Yeah, yeah. I don't believe that kind of robots will, there will be war between humans and robots. I feel like all these things we read and watch in sci-fi literature, movies, it's
Mhm.
just a reflection of our human fears.
Mm.
So yeah, let us stay in sci-fi. The only thing that will harm us is a human being. That's
That's true.
the ultimate truth.
Yeah, we can see it as a tool for creation of democracy, tool for human empowerment, or negative
Yeah,
side of things. So
yeah,
it's us working towards a better future and using these as tools. Wonderful.
100%.
No,
Yeah.
we're approaching time. Before I send you off, I wanna thank you and also there's been a tradition that's been established in the few episodes that I've done, which is go straight into the lightning round before we let a guest go. So I'm going to throw a whole bunch of questions at you really, really fast and get your
Let me
first
drink coffee.
reactions. Uh, yeah, get that caffeine and hydration. So let me throw a few questions at you and just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay,
Ready.
more autonomy or more visibility?
Visibility.
Perfect UI on a mediocre robot or mediocre UI on a great robot?
I'm a perfectionist. Perfect UI on a great robot. Sorry.
You want both things to be great. Fair. You can have it. Most overrated interface feature in robotics that has no value. That's just there.
I don't know. That's a hard thing. The digital twin.
Okay. Yeah. Most underrated interface feature.
Commenting.
Commenting.
Commenting. If something happened, if I can put my comment on it and let everybody
Mm,
see on that.
lessons learned. Yeah. One signal that tells you robot isn't ready for deployment.
Rate of failures. If
Mm.
it's higher, if it's above than zero, to be honest, if we're talking about consumers.
Best thing about New York City.
People.
Best thing about LA.
Weather.
Yeah, true. That's sunshine. Best thing about Silicon Valley.
Action. obsession about what people are building, and that bubble
The
could be
good
bad
and the
side
bad.
too, but it's exactly, yeah,
Mm. Okay,
yeah.
we'll leave it at that. One thing in your life that you want robot to help you with.
Just doing things that I hate doing, to be honest. Dishes, cleaning, yeah, or cooking, yeah,
Take the chores away. Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, a lot of companies are working on that. One thing humans do better than robots, hands down.
Oh, there are so many answers. I'll go with a safer answer: lying,
Lying.
deceit, of course.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes us human, the unsure motives that we all
yeah,
have.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I've not heard that before. I've asked that question
Okay,
so far, so I've gotten all these different answers. Yeah,
what
that's
have
a
you
good one.
heard, if I can ask you?
A lot of founders froze. They said, "I can't think of anything that humans do better." And some of them talked about kindness, which is through the human side of things, right?
Okay, yeah, that's good. I was gonna say making love, but I feel like it's a matter of time.
That's that's fine. Nobody's gonna judge you. That's a great answer too. Reproduction, right? Robots have not figured that out yet. Last question: if you could ask Optimus Prime anything, what would it be?
Oh, take me to your planet.
Love it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Shak, thank you for being so generous with your time, your energy, your answers, and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. This has been great. I loved having this conversation. Good luck to you with your new office, with your
Mm.
scale. And I want to stay in touch and continue to collaborate with you as you put more products out there, learn more about
Mm.
them.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. Great times. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
We'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Cheers.